In the vast main hall of the Celestial Apex Merchant Guild, once a symbol of power and order, the sharp crack of a slap shattered the suffocating silence. A young master in embroidered silk collapsed onto the cold stone floor, his face swollen and twisted. Around him dozens of subordinates lowered their heads, not a single one daring to step forward. The one who struck him was a young man with eyes as cold as ice. Diep Chung. He was not a member of Celestial Apex. Not an invited guest. Yet he stood in the very heart of a guild that once dominated the alliance, delivering punishment to the air as if judging a criminal. Above them, Guildmaster Lumnur K tightened her grip on the armrest of her seat. She did not intervene. That single detail was enough to send shockwaves through the hall, because the most terrifying thing was not a man bold enough to strike someone in the grand chamber, but a once mighty guild allowing it to happen. Celestial Apex was weakening. Its reputation remained, but its strength had hollowed out from within. Outside, major factions watched in silence. The Grand Martial Commerce Summit was approaching, the event that would reshape the balance of power, and the moment that young master fell, a signal rippled across the merchant world. Celestial Apex would either collapse, or someone else would rewrite the rules. After the resounding slap in the Grand Hall, the gates of Celestial Apex were sealed shut. Outside, rumors spread like wildfire. Inside, the truth was far more terrifying than any whisper. Lam Nurke stood in the now empty chamber, her voice lowering as she finally spoke the truth she had long tried to conceal. Celestial Apex was nothing more than a gilded shell. The elite force known as the Profound Gold Shadow Guard, the trump card that once made rival guilds wary, had not appeared in years. Their strongest expert remaining could preserve appearances but not inspire real fear. Meanwhile, the Grand Martial Commerce Summit was fast approaching. This was no ceremonial gathering, it was where power across the entire alliance would be reshuffled. If Celestial Apex's true weakness were exposed before the summit, the surrounding factions would not hesitate to move in and carve them apart. Ziepchurncombe looked directly at Nurke. He did not ask whether they should fight. He asked only one question: how long before they arrive? To defend meant to wait for death. To stay silent meant to be devoured. Celestial Apex did not lack reputation, but it was running out of time. If you can feel the storm closing in, comment 1 to follow the first move that will change the entire game. If defending meant waiting to die, then there was only one path left. Strike first. That very night, while rumors of the slap were still spreading, Diep Chung selected his first target, the Azure Cloud Merchant Guild. A guild that appeared neutral on the surface, but in truth had been quietly probing Celestial Apex, feeding information to the power behind the curtain. If you want to know who's watching you, he said, crush the smallest piece on the board. No fanfare. No announcements. Under the cover of night, Diep Chung and Han Tulung infiltrated the Azure Cloud estate. They did not come to negotiate, nor to issue a warning. They came to ignite an explosion. In the central courtyard, the Azure Cloud Guildmaster barely had time to register what was happening before an invisible strike shattered his mental defenses. In just a few breaths, their defensive lines collapsed. Han Tulung followed with a finishing move, her blade sweeping across the cold moonlight. Blood spilled across the stone steps. By dawn, the entire Azure Cloud Guild was kneeling at the gates of Celestial Apex, begging to submit. A merchant guild erased in a single night. Celestial Apex was no longer standing still, waiting to be devoured. They had struck the match themselves and set the storm in motion. At dawn, before the body of the Azure Cloud Guild Master had even gone cold, a formal proclamation was issued across the entire city. Celestial Apex announced Azure Cloud had colluded with shadow forces, disrupting the order of the Alliance. Celestial Apex had no choice but to act in order to preserve stability within the merchant world. The true mastermind behind the scheme was still hiding and would pay the price. Within hours, public opinion shifted. Instead of being seen as ruthless aggressors expanding their power, Celestial Apex positioned itself as the keeper of order. During the public explanation, Diep Chung deliberately mentioned the mysterious Heaven Treasury Pavilion, a vague reference but one heavy with implication. The message was unmistakable. Celestial Apex was not alone. This was the turning point. From a guild rumored to be weakening, Celestial Apex became the center of gravity in the city's power structure. Intelligence networks stirred into overdrive. Heavenly One Hall was forced to reconsider its next move. The mysterious Heaven Treasury Pavilion found itself in an awkward position, unwillingly dragged into the game. Diep Chung hadn't merely destroyed a merchant guild. He had altered the heartbeat of the entire city. And from the moment that proclamation was posted at the Alliance gates, the merchant world entered a new phase 1, where every move on the board carried the risk of igniting full-scale war. The ink on Celestial Apex's proclamation had barely dried when the chain reaction erupted. Inside the Grand Hall of Heavenly One Hall, the air was thick with killing intent. Azure Cloud had been their piece on the board, now publicly beheaded and branded with the charge of undermining Alliance order. If Heavenly One retaliated, it would be tantamount to admitting they were the power behind the curtain. But if they remained silent, their prestige would crumble. At the same time, the mysterious Heaven Treasury Pavilion realized its name had surfaced in Celestial Apex's pointed insinuations. They had been dragged into a game they had never chosen to enter. To deny involvement would cost them face. To acknowledge it would mean stepping into direct conflict with Heavenly One Hall. The balance of power stretched thin like a taut thread suspended between two abyssal cliffs. Within Celestial Apex, Lam Nurk K understood a bitter truth: last night's victory was only surface level. Their internal strength remained fragile. The profound gold Shadow Guard was still nowhere to be found. If Heavenly One chose to launch a preemptive strike before the Grand Martial Commerce Summit, Celestial Apex would struggle to withstand it. Dieptrungkom had thrust the board into chaos. But chaos also meant volatility. One misstep and everything they had just built could collapse in an instant. Within 2 days, ominous signs began arriving in waves. Heavenly One Hall neither declared war nor remained fully silent. Instead, they captured a Celestial Apex envoy, crippled his cultivation, and publicly hung him at their gates as a warning. No formal announcement was needed. Everyone understood the message. We have not acted yet. But we can act at any time. Meanwhile, the mysterious Heaven Treasury Pavilion still refused to take a clear stance. Their silence was no longer an advantage, it had become a dangerous void. If at the final moment they chose to wash their hands of the situation, Celestial Apex would be left to face Heavenly One alone. Inside the guild, the elders began to waver. Some proposed concessions, seeking reconciliation before the Grand Martial Commerce Summit. Others feared Azure Cloud was merely the first spark in a coming wave of bloody retaliation. For the first time, Lam Nurk K truly felt the pressure tightening around her chest. Celestial Apex's reputation had been thrust skyward, but its foundation of strength remained fragile. The profound gold Shadow Guard had yet to reappear. Their core forces were insufficient to withstand a full-scale assault. Dieptrungkom stood atop the watchtower, gazing toward Heavenly One's stronghold, its lights burning through the night. If they struck before the summit, Celestial Apex would have no chance to recover. For the first time, his bold move stood on the brink of backfiring. The strategic silence of the mysterious Heaven Treasury Pavilion created a fragile equilibrium, and in that precise moment, Celestial Apex seized the opportunity. Dieptrungkom did not wait for Heavenly One Hall to finalize its counterattack. He publicly announced that all of Azure Cloud's assets had officially been absorbed into Celestial Apex. At the same time, he opened their resource vaults to support smaller merchant guilds that had long been suppressed. It was a move both forceful and calculated to win public favor. If Heavenly One acted now, they would be seen as disruptors of the greater order. If they did nothing, their influence would erode day by day. Inside Celestial Apex's Grand Hall, the elders no longer wavered. The way they looked at Dieptrungkom had changed. From an outsider who stirred chaos, he had become the one steering their fate. On the eve of the Grand Martial Commerce Summit, dark clouds blanketed the sky. But this time, Celestial Apex was no longer prey, waiting to be torn apart. They stood at the center of the board. Dieptrungkom said quietly, "When everyone fears chaos, the one who dares to create it holds the power." The true storm had yet to descend. But the balance of power had already shifted. If you want to witness the coming clash at the Grand Martial Commerce Summit and see who truly commands the board, comment 1 to continue.